Welcome to the latest episode of The Independent. I'm Pete Sampson, joined as always by my co-host Matt Fortuna. Today on the show, former Notre Dame offensive lineman, friend of the pod, Mike Golic Jr. joins to talk the Miami game. A little bit more nuance of the offensive line play, which I know that everyone is clamoring for, nuanced offensive line talk. But it was pretty enlightening. I think you'll enjoy it. Before we get into the show, I want to thank a new sponsor, Home Run In Pizza. I can speak from personal experience, a bit of a lifesaver in my house with daughter in volleyball, son in youth soccer, not a lot of time to cook or make dinners. Home Run on Pizza has come to the rescue more than once at dinner time in the Sampson household.
Or if you're just a college football fan who had a long day of watching college football on TV and you forget to feed yourself, you could house an entire Home Run Pizza by yourself. Grab it out of the freezer in no time to catch up on what you should have eaten during halftime. Also, a fun fact, Home Run In is the original tavern-style pizza, the OG, cutting pizza into squares, real Chicago tavern style. Thank you again to our friends at Home Run In for sponsoring The Independent.
All right, Matt. We are now, I don't know what's the 24-hour rule coaches used. I think we're at like 72.
I'm thrown off because it was a Sunday night game.
Right, 96 hours. I don't even know what day of the week it is. I've watched the game back a couple times. And I think a lot of times when I do that, like I feel differently, sometimes better, sometimes worse about where Notre Dame is. I got to say I feel about the same. And how I felt on Sunday night was like I use the term underreact. Like I still feel like they're going to be fine.
I think they'll be fine. They'll be fine if they beat Texas A&M. Now,
yes.
Duh. Thanks for the great analysis, Matt. I don't come out of it too concerned, but there is a new level of pressure on this A&M game right now because you don't want to go 0-2, especially with the new quarterback, and especially if you have the same mistakes that you had against Miami, because that's just going to invite a whole lot of noise into your program, and we wouldn't even be out of the second week of September yet, or third week, I guess, in their case. I mean, that would be the second 0-2 start for Marcus Freeman in his 4 years as Notre Dame's head coach. It was just a three-game losing streak dating back to last year, much like Freeman's first year. You just don't want any of that. So yes, like I'm not panicking, but like you got to beat A&M, who's a very talented football team, who's a very well-coached football team.
Yes.
And I'll be curious to see, and Mike Golic Jr. gets into this a little bit as far as just how much Miami's defense kind of played into Notre Dame's offense's weaknesses. Does A&M do something similar? I don't know. It remains to be seen. A&M does have a game between now and then against Utah State, so maybe we'll know a little bit more about them coming out this Saturday. But yeah, I'm not by no means pressing the panic button, but I don't feel much differently here on Thursday than I did coming out of it late Sunday night. As far as the offensive line was disappointing, the defense took a little too long for my taste to get in control, and you got to feed number 4. Like, don't forget that guy is on your roster because he's the best player you've got. And, his father had some tweets, post game, expressing as much. You all need to get on the same page and feed that guy. Because if nothing else, you've got him and the other team doesn't. And usually that means good things are going to happen with the ball in his hands.
Yeah, and I think that, CJ Carr, first start to second start, how different that looks will be fascinating to sort of see, what does Mike Denbrock and Gino Guidugli get out of him that's, maybe we can just skip by the RPOs at the beginning and just go to more of a intermediate or deep shot pass game. Obviously, you have to protect a little bit better than they did on Sunday night to do that. But, and I think I'll be interested to sort of see Carr's self-awareness about, let's just hand the ball off. Like, let's go with the sure thing here, opposed to, I'm going to go out and make a Hollywood throw, which he's capable of doing. But it's, I think for so many players, like quarterbacks in particular, it's like, what does the team need me to do? I'll do that. Not what do I want to do? I'm going to make this throw. And I think, Carr, obviously his football IQ is very, very high. So I think Carr understanding a little bit more of like, hey, here's what this team needs, not necessarily the throw I want to make, but the handoff that I need to make. Like that, I think there will be a lot of growth for him from the first to the second start as well. And I think Chris Ash in particular, when I got home, I started thinking about the game and just like, man, they just didn't really cause Miami any problems. Like where are the havoc plays, which, is TFLs plus forced fumbles plus INTs plus PBUs. They only had 5 in the game. And I think in Al Golden's 3 years, Notre Dame averaged 11 per game. But Al Golden's first game at Ohio State, they had 4. Maybe a defensive coordinator needs more than 1 week to understand his personnel. I think that's maybe a charitable reading of it, but I think a reasonable reading at the same time.
I think that's fair, although, holding that Ohio State team to 21 points was an accomplishment in and of itself, given how talented they were this year. Not to say Miami isn't. The other thing, and again, we talked about this with Mike, but I think you just got to settle on 5 on the offensive line. Like, I know it was the first game and you're trying to figure out who's doing what. There's something unsettling to me watching a game when offensive linemen are rotating. And again, Notre Dame never did that under Harry Hiestand. Mike Golic Jr., who's called a lot of games in his career, has said other programs do it fairly regularly. There's something unsettling to me watching that happen, short of jumbo packages, which is a whole other conversation we could probably get into here. The tight end depth certainly is a concern coming in. But yeah, you can't use your slot receivers as extra tight ends, so to speak, on the goal line.
No.
That also is a bit of a problem.
No. Yeah. Imagine somebody else's slot receiver trying to block Kingston Viliama-Asa. Like, I think we would have a field day with that. So asking Will Pauling or Jaden Grayhouse to do it, probably not a winning proposition. I think another sort of sentiment that has come out post game is like, Chris Ash wants to install more zone defenses with Notre Dame, and this is a little bit wonky, but it was kind of a reaction to Ohio State, not having their way with Notre Dame secondary, but able to sort of manipulate all that man stuff. Well, we have access at The Athletic to some kind of higher level stats, and they were in man half the time and zone half the time at Miami. And, while Carson Beck had a very high completion percentage against zone, I think it was at 81.3% versus 50% for man. Both of the touchdowns came against man defenses. So I don't think that there's a scheme solution there. I think it's do what you're doing, but do it better. I asked Mike Golic this because I think watching the game back, it just felt like a lot of read and react type stuff where did the guys on defense know exactly where to be and when to be there? Did they have that feel that Jack Kaiser built over 172 starts or Xavier Watts as a 2-time All-American? Like, no, they didn't. But did you think that they were going to? Like, I don't think that's necessarily a fair expectation either, even though, in all the Al Golden years, we sort of have come to expect Notre Dame is going to be locked in on their stuff all the time on defense. Like, that wasn't always the case early on in Al Golden's tenure, but certainly was the last year 2, year 3. Like, we're back to year 1 with Chris Ash. I think this is sort of a unfortunate real byproduct of that.
Yeah, that part was a little bit surprising to me, just because I thought part of the reasoning, so to speak, for bringing him in as a DC and keeping the entire staff on that side of the ball intact was that they were not going to try to reinvent the playbook here. What they did last year worked. Similar model as far as career path, coming back to be a defense coordinator at Notre Dame. And look, the talent's there, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know at what point in the season we'll stop talking about this, hopefully very soon. But I think if we're still talking about this by the end of September, that's a bit of a problem, because the personnel on that, I think, is deeper and better than it was last year on defense. Now, it's not as experienced, but that's what the games are for. You get there. I thought you made a good point on the previous pod. The crazy one-handed touchdown pass to not Malachi Tony, CJ Daniels, right?
Yeah.
CJ. Yeah, I said CJ Daniels. I immediately thought of BJ Daniels, the USF quarterback who tore up Notre Dame in 2011. Last CJ.
Strike that from the record.
USF is back.
Yeah.
How often will you see that happen, right? Where Lennon Moore gets beat and Adon Schuler just kind of gets cold feet, so to speak.
Fielding a punt.
Yeah. Or maybe he just didn't want to get a targeting call. I don't know. But like, he's one of the more aggressive players on this defense. He was not aggressive on that play. And even then, it took a freaky catch to penalize Notre Dame there. And Beck got pressured on that as well. Like, the defense, for the most part, did its job on that play, and they just got beat, which is going to happen sometimes when you play good teams. But yeah, it just never felt like they were in control or asserted themselves until it was too late. They had that 4-drive stretch after the opening drive touchdown of the third quarter, where they held Miami, I think, to 15 yards across 13 plays, 4 straight 3-and-outs. But Miami gets the ball back. All they need is a field goal, and they're able to get it. It felt like when Miami needed those tough yards for the most part, just to move the chains forward and keep that clock running, they were able to do that. And that's, again, good teams are going to do that. But when your offensive line, defensive line driven program, I feel like that those are the parts that eat at your soul. If you're Marcus Freeman, if you're Chris Ash, like not getting that stop when you had gotten 4 straight stops when it came down to winning time. That to me is the part where, all right, what went wrong here? We know Miami offensive line is very good, probably the best we'll play all year. But how do we fix that moving forward and poise our well?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, even you go back and watch that drive, I think the first play of it, like Notre Dame's kind of in some soft zone or something. And, I think it's maybe a back out of the backfield or slot receiver just catches a pass. Like, it's like a 2-yard, 4-yard gain and like spins out of 3 tackles and it turns into a 9-yard gain. Like how often last year when Notre Dame's defenders hit somebody, they either were stopped in their tracks or bowed backwards. I mean, you think back to like an obvious shirt that we unfortunately never got to put together from the Army game about violence. Like when Notre Dame could kick the crap out of you defensively. And that wasn't like a scheme issue. It was an attitude issue. And there weren't a lot of moments from the game where you're just like, they're hitting harder than Miami is hitting them. And that's a weird place for Notre Dame to be after last year, where that was like their calling card throughout after Northern Illinois. So I would, as much as I think the offensive line will play better as a reaction, I think Jeremiah Love will get a ton of touches as a reaction. If we're going to, use Adon Schuler's sort of fair catch interception attempt as an example, like I think Adon Schuler is going to knock the living crap out of somebody against A&M. And I think the defense overall, like, will be pushing the edge of the envelope so hard where, like, Marcus Freeman is never going to welcome a personal foul penalty. But I think if they got one, it would not be the end of the world either.
Friend of Notre Dame, Pat Narduzzi. Remember he had that famous line, "I want 60 minutes of unnecessary roughness," and he kind of had to walk it back. But like that set a tone for those Michigan State defenses, and I don't think Notre Dame would be hurt by carrying a similar mentality into the A&M game. One more thing on Miami, we talked about this off air. I'm not sure how many of you saw this online, and I don't know if this was posted before or after the game. I imagine it was before. Ruben Bain Jr.'s Instagram of his team issue notebook. We could curse on here, but if I repeated every curse that he has on here, I don't know if we could get fined, but maybe we would. Game number 1, he has 4 different versions of FND, spells it out, and F Notre DICK. It says 3-stack game, which they got 3 as a team. Maybe that's what he meant.
Right.
He has F Jeremiah Love, F. Why Not You, August 31st. Also Legacy with the A in Legacy of 4, which I believe does not mean Jeremiah Love. It means Ruben Bain Jr. But this was like serial killer-esque stuff for Ruben Bain Jr. And you know what? Like, I think Abdul Carter had some of that in them. Like, some of the best pass rushers are your most unhinged personalities, and that serves you very well on the football field, as it did for Ruben Bain Jr.
Frankly, much more terrifying if you're going to go the F Notre Dame route, if you write it down, than if you paint it on your nails.
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah,
completely. I did think of that when I was reading this, and I thought this was a little more. And it says convicts versus Catholics twice, not Catholics versus convicts on that as well. Convicts did win that one. So
I would say Miami, I am so interested to watch them the rest of the year. Not just for Ruben Bain, although Bain and Mesidor, like that's just like a terrifying pair of defensive end names. Like one of them literally was a Batman villain. I feel like the other one could have been too.
They did their presser together. Like it was very
like I think Miami is like good. Like they'll be in the playoff. I'm a little concerned about like the end of the game, or not the end, but like the lead up to the end where Mario Cristobal seem to still do Mario Cristobal things, but managing the clock or not. But I feel like Miami is like legit. Like that's a legit CFP ACC title team.
Well, they were last year and they blew it.
Yeah, that's true.
So, yes, I agree with you, but like we'll know Miami's back, not when they beat Notre Dame or Clemson or whoever.
Or
We'll know they're back
Bethune-Cookman this weekend.
when they're not, when they're not blowing it against Georgia Tech or blowing a 21-0 lead at Syracuse, where if they win that game, they're in the ACC title and they're probably in the playoff, regardless of what happens that game against SMU. I mean, they got left out of the ACC title game essentially on a tiebreaker to Clemson. So this is, I'm not doubting how good they are and can be. My question is the same as it's always been. Can they keep it up over the course of the season? And look, for as much heat as Mario Cristobal takes in game, like he did win a Rose Bowl and back-to-back titles when he was at Oregon. Like the guy is, outside of those 60 minutes on Saturday, sometimes is as good as it gets as far as building a program. So I am curious, though, how do they handle the high success?
And they look, we kind of joke about Bethune-Cookman this weekend, but like there are 3 games to follow.
Yeah.
Home to South Florida, which is sneaky good. Then home to Florida, and then they go to Florida State. Like that, if they get through that and they're 4-1, never mind 5-0, like they're freaking on the move at that point. Like they got a chance to be real good because they don't play Clemson in the regular season. I
mean, this is a Miami podcast, so I don't want to go too far down this road, but like they ran Florida off the field in their opener last year.
Yeah, right.
And everyone thought Billy Napier was done and Miami was back. Like, what do you think was a bigger win for Miami? Beating Florida in a statement game like that or beating Notre Dame in a close game like this?
Not close.
What do you think?
I mean, Notre Dame.
You think so?
For Mario, I mean, for Ruben Bain, apparently in his notebook, like I think it like knocking off Notre Dame the year after in the national championship game.
Fair.
Beat Notre Dame, not because you had a transcendental quarterback, but because your line play was just like ass kickers on both sides of the ball. Like that's what Mario Cristobal wants his program to look like. And so I think that's why it's more significant.
Fair. I just think given how bad they were the 2 years before last year and given just how them in Florida did not even look like they were on the same plane and the in-state rivalry, like I think it's very unique to there. Like I wouldn't dismiss that one because that put us Miami on all of our radars the rest of the year.
Well,
and they were until the
other way. What do you? Because I think when Notre Dame beat A&M last year, that was like this is a great win, and then it was kind of like it was a pretty good win by the end of the year. I think this Miami loss. I don't want to get into the quality loss discussion, but like this will be a good loss throughout the rest of the season. Like I don't think. When Miami finishes 10-2 or 11-1, like you're going to look back at this, and I think it will be a positive for Notre Dame, not a negative.
I think so too. But if A&M beats Notre Dame last year, then we're probably saying the same about A&M because that would change their season. But yes, that's neither here nor there. Subscribe to The Athletic. Subscribe to the Inside Zone. Continue to subscribe to the podcast. You can download us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube as well. Appreciate all the love, especially all the post-game comments. Apologies we couldn't get to all of them on Sunday night. We'd also like to thank some of our sponsors, Obvious Shirts, OBVIOUSSHIRTS.com. T-shirts, quarter zips, hoodies, some of your favorite podcast sayings, some of your favorite Notre Dame sayings. They all are there. Thank you to our friends at obviousshirts.com. Please visit them for some independent merchandise.
And you can visit roback.com, RHOBACK.com. Promo code Irish for 20% off your first order. Polos, shorts, quarter zips. You got the officially licensed Notre Dame drop. Matt, I think you've received this in the mail now too. I've got Roback on right now. You can spot the dog on the shoulder. One of my favorite brands out there. You can get 20% off your first order at roback.com with the promo code Irish.
You just said that. I want to say you or they're saying should be got that dog in us because when you said not chip on the shoulder, dog on the shoulder. That's how hungry Pete is to get through this podcast. One more sponsor we'd like to thank, DraftKings. The rivalries, the marching bands, the upsets. Saturdays just got way more fun. College football is back. You think you know the game? Put your knowledge to the test with DraftKings Sportsbook and turn your picks into big payouts with live betting, rivalry week, odds boosts, and more. DraftKings Sportsbook has everything you need to own every Saturday. They already have the lineup for next week's Notre Dame game against Texas A&M. Notre Dame is a 7-point favorite in that one. You can check that out on DraftKings.com. And here's something special for first-timers. New DraftKings customers, bet $5 to get $300 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code INDEPENDENT. That's code INDEPENDENT for new customers to get $300 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. In partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, fees may apply in Illinois. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
Pleased to welcome in friend of the pod, Mike Golic Jr. You can catch him now on the Echoes with another friend of the pod, Jess Montana. Be additional podcast listening for all of our independent audience. But Mike, I'm pretty sure we have you on anytime offensive line bad, need talk about offensive line. So let's just start there. Because I think of all the things that happened on Sunday night against Miami, I felt fine about pretty much all of it except for the offensive line. So could you either make me feel better about it or tell me why my concerns are warranted?
Yeah, God, I went back and watched the game again finally last night and wanted to check out the offensive line stuff again. And the more I looked at it, like it's such a weird confluence of events. Like when we would go and watch film after the game, the general axiom was it's usually never as good or never as bad as you think. And this was really more like a game with bad moments than it was like an overall like, oh, I'm worried about this offensive line being like a major weakness or it's something this year. I think one part is I give Miami a lot of credit defensively, game plan wise. Like they had a clear goal to flatten out every Notre Dame run. So you saw for Notre Dame, whether it was, basically anytime they lined up in like their normal spread formation with Eli on one side, like Miami was going to unwrap a linebacker front side. They were going to make you go out and block everything. And it created a bunch of one-on-one matchups that, numbers wise favored the defense. Like some of those were just numerical wins more so than it was, oh, Notre Dame just got blasted off the ball every play. But, in every position, you're defined by the handful of big plays in the game. And between a couple early and then obviously the late ones where it looked like, fatigue, obviously Anthony Knapp being out in that final possession, like, Emil gets off late on the snap on that first sack on the final drive. Like, it just being at your best when your best is required is part of the job description. And when you're an offensive line that's got two captains on it, those have to be the moments that you can be counted on. And so I think that's the part that was the biggest bummer is when you needed your best pitch, it wasn't there. But down in, down out, there was still a bunch of good stuff from this team. I thought Ashton Craig played really well on the inside. Him and Billy Schrouth were really reliable all game long in terms of how they handled stuff. The right guard situation maybe was a little bit more dire than I thought coming out of camp. I thought the benefit of having veteran presence around you on both sides, I thought was going to insulate. But again, credit Miami's game plan. There were not a lot of like the biggest difference. I'm rambling now. I'm sorry. The biggest difference between Notre Dame's O-line performance and Miami's O-line performance was there were a lot more opportunities for double teams for the Miami offensive line. Notre Dame's defense on early rundowns for Miami was stagnant. It was a 4-2 box look, and you had a chance to get heavy on the D tackles on the inside and create movement. Miami never gave Notre Dame that opportunity offensively. There were very rare instances where, like, Notre Dame, who loves to run a bunch of counter and power, got frontside double teams that they were able to work with. It was guys having to work one-on-one blocks in a way that's advantage defense. Like, you want to create double teams at the point of attack. You want to create angles. And there just weren't a ton of those by design on a lot of these, coupled with, hey, Miami was putting guys in the box, forcing CJ to spit it out if you were going to go by the letter on the law on a lot of these RPOs. So I think all that is to say, I feel like this offensive line is still going to be a good to very good unit, but having your best stuff when you need it is still a big part of the job description.
Like you mentioned the right guard spot. We saw this, I want to say the Louisville game 2 years ago where they rotated a game as well. I don't know if that's a Joe Rudolph thing or what. I don't remember ever seeing that before Joe Rudolph got there. I don't think I ever saw it when you were playing. I mean, is that doable? And have you seen it elsewhere? Because it rings to me as something is off.
No, I mean, there's plenty of programs that do it. Some people like to build depth that way and get guys in, especially if it's been a close battle like it was at that spot for those guys in camp. Like, obviously, to your point, Harry didn't do that when we were in school. Like, we had the same set five my whole senior year. But I think it's one of those spots where if it's close with two guys and maybe coming out of camp, you still didn't feel like there was a definitive answer and one struggling early on, and Gerby had a couple of spots where maybe wanted a few reps back early. You get a guy in and try there. Like, I don't think it's totally damning. Like, obviously with a position like center, you'd never do that, but with guard, again, given what they've got on that line, I don't think that's cause for concern. Like, you see that plenty of places, I guess, is my overall point there.
Yeah, it's like I do think back to, I think it's Tommy Kramer and Robert Hainsey in 2017 rotated, but to Matt's point, way more exception than rule. So one thing that I was curious about this offensive line going into the season is like not a concern, but I don't know. Is I thought that Riley Leonard last year made the offensive line maybe look better than it was all the time because he could just get out of stuff. And CJ Carr that showed some really good things in the run game. He's not going to have guys bouncing off of him like Leonard did. Do you think that's a fair critique going into the year of okay, the line I thought overachieved in a lot of ways last year, but maybe Leonard made it look a little bit better than we thought that it was just because, he's not getting sacked because he's spinning out of stuff and you have to respect him as a run threat. You can't just pin your ears back and go for it. The way that maybe you can with somebody like Carr.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And just Riley's speed on the perimeter. Like, we watched him outrun Jalen Walker and guys from Georgia. Like, he's not a sneaky athlete. He's not just a white quarterback who can move. He's a legitimate NFL athlete at that position. So, no, I that definitely goes a long way. And CJ showed me way more. I wasn't around and didn't see camp practices, but I didn't think we would be dusting off the short yardage Riley Leonard plays for CJ Carr. And yet here we were with QB power that, hey, you block the nose guard and all of a sudden that's probably a win there. We saw him affect the game on the ground that way, but it definitely helps. It's a big factor. And it was one of the questions early on this season. I was going to be curious to see how Mike Denbrock tried to offset that. And you kind of saw the answer in this game, right? They were really creative, albeit the tight end depth right now.
Yeah,
to me was the biggest. When we talk about everything with the Notre Dame run game, to me, it's especially down in the red area. You seem really limited personnel wise in what they're going to be able to do. And I don't know if it's, we resort to what Miami did, putting a sixth offensive lineman on the field at some point, trying to get big that way and overcome it. But you're going to be limited in certain things you can do. And so one of the ways they offset that was they did use Eli in a lot of interesting ways, whether it was coming across and sneaking out of the back, some of the creep motion stuff inside the box, they had him inserting on the run game, but they used him. And, we saw a couple of just easy drops on bunnies that were supposed to be RPO looks on the backside that are kind of there to give you that same effect that Riley was able to do in the run game. And then, in the pass game, that's also a factor. And, not having Aeneas Williams in there, who was Notre Dame's best pack protecting running back last year, certainly I thought was a factor. You saw Jeremiah and Jadarian chip a couple of times on the way out, but I'd imagine they're going to have to live a little bit differently, at least in the early going, because you aren't afforded that same thing that Riley gave you. At the same time, CJ does seem pretty composed as a passer, so maybe you also mitigate that by getting the ball out of his hands quick, stuff like that.
Mike, how much of this is, I don't want to say cause for panic, but, we did our post-game show, and even the tenor from the commenters was hey, it's just one game. We're not going to play too many teams as good as Miami. There are a lot of good things to take out of it. As you said, it's never as good or as bad as it feels like in real time. How concerning or not concerning should it be with the offensive line? Because A&M, yes, but outside of these first 2 weeks, I don't know if they're going to face a defense that's going to give them problems up front the way Miami did. how much of this is quickly fixable? And what was kind of your just grand takeaway while watching that game live? And it just as an alum and your kind of mental, emotional, toll, so to speak.
My mental and emotionals were not great during that game. I will say that. But again, that's why I wanted to take a couple of days and then watch it again. And what I came away thinking, honest to God, and this is just such former offensive line bias, but you hand off a couple of those RPOs early that looked like they were blocked up pretty well from the behind angle. And I think we're talking about this a little bit differently. And you saw Jeremiah's reaction on a couple of those where he's head nodding going through the hole because he saw the gap that he had and he saw the opportunity they had on a couple of those that were blocked up early. And again, young quarterback, you're giving him those options because you want to get him in a good rhythm early on, and he's playing it by the letter of the law, right? Whoever the read guy is on that particular play, if he's down where he's supposed to be, he's going to spit the ball out, and it worked out. Jordan Faison got some easy access throws. They got some easy yards out of that worked fine. But, in trying to get some of those early body blows and trying to get Jeremiah involved in the game early, I do think all of a sudden, because you go back and you just pause it on a couple of those looks, and there's holes there. There's spots blocked up, even for all the stuff we talked about with this offensive line. So I'm sure that's going to be a point of emphasis during the bye, all this chatter that we're hearing about Jeremiah not getting enough touches and stuff like that. But I do think that goes a long way. So I was less worried after I watched that tape. I still think, when he comes back and whenever that is, I am very interested to see where Charles plays. And I think there's a conversation to be had about that. But overall, no, I still think this is a group that in a lot of ways looked like it's capable of doing the things that can help this team win during the season. Once this offense kind of figures out who it is, because it's a big transition when all of a sudden you are trying to get a freshman quarterback going. He does seem to be a pretty composed passer in a way that's going to open up that offense and look a lot different than it did early last season. So we're kind of in the middle of an identity shift, and I think the offensive line felt that the most.
It's kind of a strange question, but from your point of view as a fan now, is it maybe a good thing that people are freaking out a little bit? The standards have been raised, quite a bit around here. I think people got used to man, I really enjoyed that winning last year, Indiana, Georgia, Penn State. Maybe this is just a sign of the times for Marcus Freeman now. I think in the past, you'd go down to lose to Miami. That's fine. 27-24, not that big of a deal. I think the fan is it just a sign of where the fan base is now? It's hey, we expect to win these games all the time, not just some of the times.
Yeah. Oh, that's exactly what you want. The standard should be different now. And I think that says a lot, right? In the past, this would have been, Notre Dame's big game problem. Notre Dame can't win the big one. And now it's oh, no, we just watched you do it. And so now it is expected every time. And, close is only good in horseshoes and hand grenades. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff to take away from it. But yeah, that's exactly what Marcus Freeman and this program want. It's what they've got now. So I'm completely with you on that.
What were your just big picture takeaways of CJ Carr for his first start?
Man, I don't know if we can cuss on this, but the guy's got some stuff about him. It's just one of those things. And I was talking to someone the other day, they're very different players, but having a young quarterback come in and being an offensive lineman with that guy, and especially this group that Notre Dame has this year, 2 captains, guys that got all that experience last year, your thought is put it on us. Hey, you don't got to do anything crazy. We got you. We're going to take care of you. It's almost like a big brother sort of mentality. But I remember being on the sidelines in 2012, and obviously, we had Everett and Tommy, but Everett for being a redshirt freshman, we knew Tommy, he'd played football before. He's going to have everyone in the right spot. But Everett's demeanor always stuck out to me on the sideline. He was so composed. He was so calm. He came up and down the sideline and was talking to everyone in between series. He was doing grown quarterback stuff as a redshirt freshman, even as he was going through his own growing pains. And that stuff matters. It calms the rest of the group down. I understand you got veteran leaders elsewhere on this offense, but having that at quarterback helps everyone feel all right, I can just go do my job. We don't got to baby this guy. He's ready for it. And for him to show up and make some extracurricular plays, to be tough and get hit and get up on some of those QB run plays where they called his number, and to be willing to take the chances to go downfield, to have that deep shot one-on-one with Malachi Fields where he said, all right, I got the matchup I want. I got my guy. I'm going to give him a shot for it. Like, he showed so much composure in that environment. And like, that was my biggest takeaway is it seemed like the game plan certainly was trying to get him involved early, purposely, and get him comfortable. And while we can all beef with maybe not getting Jeremiah enough touches, because he's so clearly the team's best player, might be our most explosive receiver. Like, we just never had a guy at that position. We've had great running backs. No one has ever moved like this guy. It's insane to watch just the explosiveness. When he caught that little swing and hit the gas pedal on the sideline and just erased the angle from the Miami defender. Like, he's an absurd athlete. But the long-term benefits from getting CJ that kind of experience of being a guy who played so well to the point where we started that final drive and you got a minute left and no timeouts, and I go, we have a chance. And for that to be already the feeling for that quarterback who's going to make mistakes, who's going to have his own interesting emotions to deal with, playing his first home game in South Bend as the starter, all that stuff. But man, I just feel like that early investment is going to pay dividends for a guy that seems like he's got a chance to not just be along for the ride, but be a legitimate plus contributor for the team.
Yeah, I would agree with that because I think when it was 21-7, I'm like, this it did not feel good for where it was going. So like even in defeat, I feel like Carr, earns some cred with that. Defensively, I know it's the other side of the ball. Like, I have a hard time sort of getting a read on Chris Ash game one. It's a change of scheme. They play more zone than they did last year, but still a lot of man. When you watch the game back, to me, it had less to do with like the calls and more with guys maybe not being totally certain with the call itself. Like, how do I execute this? What's my job? What did you see when you watched the defense back?
Too many guys reading and reacting. Like, yeah. I don't know if that's part of the defense, but like a lot of it was like Notre Dame was 4 down linemen, two backers, and let's, 2 gap, 1.5. I don't know what they're teaching them specifically, but like, let's hold up at the point of attack and our linebackers are going to flow and make plays. Like, I kept wondering, like, where is Drake Bowen coming downhill and mashing someone's face? Like, where are we letting these guys create havoc along the line of scrimmage? And I know havoc rate was one of the bigger discrepancies in this game between Notre Dame and Miami, but I thought in that feeling out, you saw it in some of the third down sub stuff where, all right, that looked a little bit more like the defense we were used to. Bodies moving around the line of scrimmage. Let's create seams. Let's get the offense and the offensive line having to communicate through some stuff. Notre Dame's defensive personnel on the D-line, like, they've got really strong quality guys. I thought Jared Dawson was our best interior defensive tackle. I'm sure it graded out that way, but like, that dude can eat up bodies. Like, if you're looking for a guy to hold up at the point of attack against double teams, he's your guy. I thought him and Gabriel Rubio honestly held up against the run at probably the best amongst our defensive tackle group that got talked about a lot in training camp. But that's just such a far cry from where we were last year, where even on early downs, it was, we're going to challenge your eye discipline, your communication as an offensive line on every snap, and let these guys go try and live on the other side of the ball. And this was just different stuff being asked of them. And so if that's going to be the formula all year long, if they come off this game and decide to tweak a little bit, but you just, going back to the original point, you gave Miami's offensive line, it's a big physical group, way too much surface area to work with on some of those interior ones, and you saw it add up at the end of the game. And so that'll be an interesting area to see for the adjust. Like, there was still good stuff in there. I thought KVA looked awesome. Like, you have him in the packages where you got 3 backers on the field, and he's on the line of scrimmage matched up with the tight end. That's advantage 27 every time. He was heavy-handed. He was active downhill. He looked awesome. I thought early in the game, Stroman looked awesome on the back end, like roving, filling that kind of role that Watts had for a long time. So there was some good stuff mixed in there, but the stuff where Notre Dame seemed to struggle a little bit up front was where they were more stagnant and asking them to just win with 6 in the box against that front.
Put yourself back in your playing day shoes if you can for a minute, Mike, and you lose a heartbreaker to a good team in week 1, you got to bye. Is that just the worst feeling in the world as far as like, I just want to get back out there immediately, or at least Saturday, and play again? Like, how tough mentally is this essential 2-week break between games for these guys?
Does it depend if Harry Hiestand is your coach or not?
Yeah. Well, honestly, like, I don't think it's all that tough. Like, the biggest difference between like fan Mike pre Notre Dame and fan Mike post Notre Dame is like when you're a player, you're done the next day. Like you're so focused on the stuff that you got to do to get ready in the next week, what's coming up at practice, what you've got to do with your life. Like fans hold on to the game way longer than we ever did at players. Like it's the most cliche sports axiom of like next play, next snap, next series, but that's how you've got to live if physically and mentally you're going to survive. And so those guys are on to whatever the set schedule it is, like whatever lift and run you've got. You'll watch the tape and you'll kind of go through it then on Sunday or Monday, however their schedule lines up. But then once you get to practice, like it's on to that. And you might hear some of the talking head stuff. Like obviously the internet's such a different force in these guys' lives than it was then. So maybe you hear that. But in terms of like, oh man, I can't wait to get back out there. Like I'm ready to get back out of practice. I'm figuring out what we've got to clean up. I'm focused on our stuff there a lot more so than like needing to get back out there after the sting. I am curious for the early bye. Like, you know, we always hear the week 1 to week 2 glow up stuff. Every team you make your most improvement. I don't know if this is going to be a force multiplier for that or if it's going to have the other effect of it because you've got such a gap. But with a young quarterback and having all that extra time, I tend to think it's the former where this can be a chance for them to take a really big jump week 1 to week 2, especially because you're going to be at home and you're going to have so much more time and familiarity. So yeah, I worry about that stuff a lot less for current guys on the team. Like that's fan stuff. We sit and worry about it and wait for them to get back out and stress about it. They're worried about where they've got to be for this period, this day.
All right, it's kind of a strange one, but like when I watched the game back, I was a little bit surprised. Like the 6 captains collectively weren't like out front in terms of like pushing. Like I don't know if they played that well, and there are some games where your captains play well and some games that don't. But as a former player, like especially in week 1, like a younger guy, you look into a captain and be like, how do you deal with this? How do you handle this? And Marcus talked about this after the game when I asked him, like he felt like the voices on the sideline were good. The leadership was good. But like, I guess when you have the captains maybe not playing as well as you need them to do, like what's that like in a locker room? What's that like sort of in a meeting or practice?
Yeah. I mean, I think you always want to be able to pull confidence from somewhere, and that's usually a good place to start. Like I always use the example of Zach. Like with Zach Martin on the team, I knew left side's locked down. We're good. So I can focus on my stuff. We're probably going to run protection my way for 57 at right guard, and away we go. And so I do think there is something of that to realizing if you are one of the players further down the depth chart or a guy who's not maybe as talented as some of those guys, like being able to look out and know on the other side of the ball, having a Manti Te'o who was going to turn the ball over 7 times at linebacker, like there is a confidence in feeling, all right, if we slip up a little bit, so-and-so's got us. And having that to look forward to versus like the feeling of watching your best players get worked over a bit. Yeah, that can be kind of jarring where you go, oh, okay, like if he's getting it, well, then what the hell's going to happen to the rest of us? That can absolutely have a bit of a trickle-down effect, but most of those guys like are still really good leaders, and being around, you know, the offensive line guys and Billy Schrouth and Emil Wagner in particular, like, you know, those guys are going to be in it mentally on the sideline, even if they're going through that. And like, that matters so much more in a game like that where, and this is where the continuity of Joe Rudolph and all these guys having another year with time under task, like, it's about problem solving on the sideline, having guys that aren't going to be phased and weren't, you know, freaking out coming off one series. It's all right, let's get back over here. Let's talk through this problem. Let's figure out a solution to it. And I think that's where you feel that stuff the most with that veteran presence for the leaders in a way that we as fans and people and pundits at home don't always get the access into because we're not down there along the sidelines.
We'll get you out of here on this, Mike. Where do you expect the biggest difference to be against A&M? What unit, which player, where do you think the biggest leap will come from?
I would expect, I mean, just production-wise, probably the running back room. Like, those guys were great in short bursts, but I just think, like, you got to give them a chance to go out here and take this game over. They're both so capable of it So I think that in the offensive line, like I got to imagine that's going to be a big point of emphasis for them. CJ said as much after the game, like talking about the interception, like I should have handed that off. And I do feel like there's like, all right, we're calm now. You're a part of the offense. We don't have to wean you in anymore. Let's go out there and get these guys lathered up early while the game is, in a manageable game script in a place that we're able to go and do this. And we're not down 2 scores in the second half, wondering how we're going to pull back into this. So I think that'll be a big jump there. And then, on the other side, it's going to be a big challenge for the defensive front. Marcus Freeman in this group called out a bunch of times and said, we need more pressure from our 4-down group. I was very surprised. Bryce Young, pretty non-existent in game 1 for a guy that's as able as he is. The pressure and sacks from Boubacar, exactly what you expected. Like, I know we've all been super high on him as a guy coming back after an injury that looks like he's super capable there. So I'd say it's going to be the trenches in the running back room that were, one had the ball kind of taken out of their hands in the running back room more so than people expected, but the other 2 got challenged big time week 1 and I think are capable enough to come back and make up for that in week 2.
Awesome. Mike Golic Jr., thanks for joining us. We'll have to do an Anchorman style podcast show off one of these days with your new show, but
yeah, no, we'll get a little home and home before we all of a sudden break out the tridents and the nets.
It'll be a bilingual bloodlust if we get the right people involved.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.